Well, guys, time to show you the new shop project. Something I've been pretty excited about. I've wanted one of these trucks for a very, very long time. I've never actually owned this body style in this brand ever. I've actually only owned, of all the GM products I've ever owned, I've only owned one actual Chevrolet branded truck. They've always been GMC. So this is my 1994 Chevy C1500 regular cab short bed. Now, at first glance, it looks like a piece of crap. And it kind of is. But it is a very cheap piece of crap, and it's a very rust-free piece of crap. So the only way I would have ever gotten one of these trucks is if it fell into my lap, basically. So the only reason why I've never bought one of these trucks is because prices are getting really high on them. I never went out of my way to look for one, really, even though I wanted one. All the ones that I ever looked at, I'm a real big fan of this GMT 400 body style. I've almost bought a Blazer in this body style with like the barn door style rear doors. And I've always been a big fan of the 2500 HD Suburbans, but they're pretty unaffordable for what I want to do with it. So this truck is a really, really good starting point, especially with what I want to do. I think it's going to be a really fun project. I'm going to try to keep a really strict budget on this deal. $3,500 is going to be my max budget for kind of the first initial stage one of what I want to do with it, which is going to be basically engine, transmission, drivetrain. And then there's going to be another phase of this project, which is kind of going to take it to where it's going to be a truck that GM never built or offered that I'm going to be pretty excited to build myself. Kind of just for a cool factor. It's going to be a little bit impractical for like real world scenarios, but basically what we're going to do with this truck is, of course, we're going to LS swap it. I'm going to be super, super, super strict on what I do with this, on just to keep my budget in line. What I'm going to wind up getting is a 6-liter block, like a Gen 3 iron block. This truck currently has a 4.3 V6 in it. It runs and drives great. Basically how I wound up in this truck. A good customer of mine for years that I've always done work for came by the shop one day. Just for reference, we're in my tint shop. This is the other part of my business. So he was a tint customer of mine. Let's pop the hood. Show you this badass, yeah, like the wires under the dash. This badass 4.3 liter. So good customer of mine comes by and goes, hey, I know you like Chevy trucks. I've got a regular cab short bed for sale. Kind of in a situation where he was trying to help somebody out. It didn't work out. And then his wife wanted it gone out of the driveway, kind of an eyesore, which I get. I'm sure my wife feels the same way. But it's a good, reliable truck. I've basically been daily driving this truck for about a month now. I've done absolutely nothing to it besides put gas and a set of wiper blades on it. All in invested, I'm $650 into this truck. For a rust-free GMT 400 regular cab short bed, it's a steal. I've looked on Marketplace to see if there's anything comparable. Most of the stuff that's selling is $1,000 to $2,000. They're usually pretty rusted out. They're usually not running or running poorly. I don't care that it has a 4.3 in it. I'd probably actually prefer it has a 4.3 in it. That's going to be step one of this whole deal. As long as I'm daily driving it, I'm going to get parts together on the side. Currently waiting for a block and a 4L80 to come to me. This 4.3 runs phenomenal. I mean, it's not a powerhouse, but it does get up the road. Doesn't get the greatest fuel mileage, but it does exactly what it needs to do. It's quiet and smooth. This truck is like 99% rust-free. I mean, both sides. This cab corner is absolutely perfect. The bed's perfect. This rocker, absolutely perfect. Got the bed full of weight right now because it's been snowing here and it's 2-wheel drive. So getting up my driveway would be pretty much impossible without the extra weight. I did get a free set of tires for it. It had the wrong size tires on it. They were really tiny. This truck was also a factory low option truck that a company called Transcoach Conversions got a hold of. They're kind of like Choo Choo Customs. I'm sure more people have probably heard of Choo Choo Customs than Transcoach Conversions. So it had a side skirt body kit that like went into fender flares on it when I got it. It's the first thing I took off. It's probably cool for somebody, not for what I'm doing with this truck. This truck's gonna get big body changes anyway. Took those off. We got some sweet 3-inch dual exhaust on this thing with the tips about a foot past the back roll pan. I don't know if it had a bumper on it when they built that. The only singular spot of rust on the whole truck, of course, would be this driver's side cap corner. Not a big deal. They make patch panels for these. Good thing I know a welder. Could get a patch panel put in this thing in probably a weekend. I don't know what I'm gonna do paint and body wise yet. I want to get kind of my second stage of what I want to do body wise with the truck. This rocker is also completely solid. All of the door frames are solid. The bed's completely solid. The frame has some surface rust on it, but it's solid. All the brake lines, fuel lines, everything under the truck is solid. From what I gather, what I was told, this truck was originally bought and owned by somebody that worked at the Baltimore plant for GM, and they kept it for basically almost 200,000 miles of its life. It got regular oil changes and maintenance. They took really good care of it. It was probably garage kept. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't get it from the original owner. I'm just kind of going off of what I was told. Like even the frame up front, even though it's covered in salt right now, it's in really good shape. All of the inner fender wells and rubber flaps are here. Everything works how it should. What I'm gonna do with this truck, I wanna make a really fun, cool little tow rig. Right now, I don't have any other trucks. I had a 2024 GMC Sierra diesel, the Eco Diesel. Total piece of shit, got rid of it in about 12,000 miles, back to the dealer 6 times. Terrible purchase. I daily drive a 2017 4Runner, and I have a 26-foot enclosed aluminum trailer and a 22-foot open steel trailer. So the 4Runner does an okay job at pulling the steel trailer open. It's not really an issue. Even with my C10, the weight, I mean, it's about as much as I can pull with it. I have pulled the enclosed with it once. I put airbags on it. It does it. It's just, it's not the best. So if I could set this truck up to pull my aluminum enclosed with the C10, I'll be really happy if it does it well. We're gonna get this 4.3 ripped out of the truck. We're gonna put a 6-liter in it, but it's not gonna be a regular 6-liter. So over my years of just building LSs and building LS cars for other people, I've acquired quite a bit of factory LS parts. When I say I'm gonna build a 6-liter, I'm gonna take a bare Gen 3 6-liter block and Gen 3 24X crank, and I've actually been donated a full set of LS3, never mind this camshaft, even though it's basically brand new. It has a Martin journal on it, which I'll show you in a second. These are very low mile, even though they look dirty. 6.2 LS3 pistons and rods for a Gen 4. So I'm gonna take the 6-liter block and have it bored out to fit the 6.2 rods and pistons on the stock 3.622 crank for a Gen 3. It'll net me 6.2 liters of displacement. Now the reason why I want to go with a 6.2 with a 6-liter block is it's going to be a lot cheaper and easier for me. I want to run an 0411 ECU in it so I can run Gen 3 stuff and make it all plug and play with this truck. But the 6.2 is just going to help out a little bit with towing and torque. I really don't plan on doing a power adder on this truck. I know my nature, it will probably get a power adder at some point. Just to get this truck running and driving and pulling my trailer, I want to have as much displacement as possible on hand. And being that I have these parts already, I think that I can get all of this stuff done in a short block for a relatively cheap price. This camshaft, which came with this 6.2 rods and pistons, is a Comp Cams grind, and I looked this up before. I think it's an old BTR. One of these journals here, that one right there, has a nick in it from a lifter. So this camshaft would be a little bit too aggressive for what I want to do anyway. I do in my spare parts have a stock LS9 Corvette camshaft. I may go that route. I may buy a brand new BTR Stage 2 truck cam or a Truck Norris cam. I'm not trying to get too wild with this build. I really just want a good, reliable towing motor. So I don't want to go like crazy with the camshaft and then have to put a big giant stall converter in it just to make the thing drivable. And I kind of want it to be pretty mild-mannered. So using that LS9 camshaft will give me a pretty factory power curve, probably be pretty good with torque. I'm going to need to do you know, lifters, trays, pretty much all that stuff brand new, but that's pretty inexpensive. I'll do a whole video on the engine build. The 4L80 is going to stay stock for now. I might put an HD2 shift kit in it, but again, this build isn't going to be anything crazy. I don't really find the need to do like crazy stuff with it. I know how it's going to progress down the road. At some point, I'll probably get into all that stuff, but for now, I'm going to keep this budget super strict at $3,500. I'm also going to include the price of parts sold off the truck. I'm sure I can get a couple bucks out of the 4.3 and the 700R. I think it's a 700R 494. It's either that or a 4L60. I'll sell that whole pool out to somebody. It runs great, so it should probably have no problem selling. I see a bunch of them on Facebook Marketplace. I just need to figure out what I'm going to wind up doing for ECU and electronics. I'd really like for everything to be factory integrated into the truck, the gauge cluster, the shifter, all of the heat and AC. I want all of that stuff to work. So it's not like it's going to be hard to do. There's a lot of stuff out there for swapping GMT 400s. Shouldn't be an issue. I got this whiteboard over here that has a bunch of old projects on it. So what I'll wind up doing is I'll wipe that off and we'll keep really good notes on the cheapest possible way to swap this truck. Now, I'm kind of going to be cheating because I do have a lot of parts that are here that are either old parts from old projects that got left over, this free box of rods and pistons. Now, if you were trying to build this truck and you didn't have those parts, obviously they're going to have to go into your expenses. Being that I have these parts and they didn't cost me anything, I'm going to use that to my advantage and try to do this as cheap as possible. Me saying a $3,500 truck build, for anybody that's taking a vehicle to a shop, and I get this all the time, people will call me up and be like, how much did LS swap my blah, 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 right? It's very open-ended. You're going to get on the internet and see that people will say, it costs $2,500 to an LS swap a car. Perfect, great. Try it. If you take all of the labor out of the equation, you can buy all of the parts. If you're as cheap as possible, you use Facebook Marketplace, you use what you have laying around, you use your buddy's parts, whatever you get given to you, you can buy the parts relatively cheap. I'm not going to include the labor because I am the labor. I have all of this stuff at my disposal. You can absolutely do this yourself. If you've got a regular toolbox, a cheap welder, you know, tools, you're handy, you can do this yourself. I could probably do this cheaper. I've bought 5.3s for as little as $75 a piece before, and if I wanted to go that route, I'm sure I could absolutely scrounge nickel and dime, but I really want to do this 6.2 idea in this truck. I've had one 6.2 Gen 3 Gen 4 combo before in a C5 Corvette, and it made great power. It ran better than any 6-liter setup that I've ever had. I think it's just going to be a really good combination for towing. Getting this truck swapped, running and driving is definitely going to be stage one of the project. That's what my $3,500 budget's going to include. Everything to get this truck running, driving, operating with the 6.2 in it. Stage two of this project, kind of the real fun stuff, taking this truck to what GM never did. So GM never built a regular cab, short bed, 2500 dually. I think it's going to be pretty goofy. A couple guys have done it. I think it's going to be really cool. It doesn't need to be a dually. I just want to do it because it's going to be super, super short, super wide, and I think it's going to turn a lot of heads. With these GMT 400 trucks, the 1500s and 2500s share a lot of parts. So the front spindles are identical on the 1500 and 2500s, as well as the upper and lower control arms are all interchangeable, and the springs and all that stuff. Same with the frame rails, the width in the rear, the width of the rear axle, where the spring perches are mounted on the rear axle. So I can take and use 2500 HD leaf springs in the rear, as well as a 2500 dually axle, bolt it directly into the truck, and then on the front end, to make that 8-lug, 2500 HD front brake rotors, because the rotor and the hub is all one unit on these trucks, and brake calipers, and basically all of the associated hardware, and swap that stuff over to 8-lug. Making this truck a regular cab short bed dually is just going to be a really fun little project to do. If I get crazy with it, I might put a gooseneck in the bed, the C10, put my C10 on a trailer, pull it around once or twice on a gooseneck. I think it'd be funny. But other than that, I just want to make a really cool, fun little head-turning tow rig to pull my stuff to the track with, pick up customer cars with, something that's going to be reliable and fun. First things first, that's going to be getting the 6-liter block, drop it off at the machine shop, get the board done to 6.2, get everything, basically all the parts and everything lined up. I want to have a long block on a stand ready to go before I even think about taking this thing apart. I'm using the shit out of this truck right now. I'm driving it pretty much every day. I've had it about a month. It's got well over 1,000 miles on it. I haven't even checked the oil in it. It's running good. It's got great oil pressure. So I'm just going to keep driving it. I'm going to start looking for parts. I'm going to keep you guys updated through this entire build process. I'm hoping to have something done C10 truck show sometime in spring. I think it'd be funny to just have this thing done up as a dually to take my 85 C10 on a trailer out there with this truck. I also have a baby that's due in April. I don't know how much time I'm going to have, but either way, I'm going to bring you guys along for this ride. You're definitely going to want to hang out and just see the progression that this truck makes over the next couple months. I got this other truck here too. This is the same truck from last weekend. Customer's truck. It's a 2016 Gen 5 L83 5.3 6L90. It has a Whipple supercharger installed. He went ahead and got a DoD delete kit done by another shop, or at least what he thought was going to be a DoD delete kit. They wound up putting just non-DoD lifters onto a DoD camshaft, which does not work. The truck runs and drives okay under light throttle, but he is having some issues with it. What we're going to wind up doing with this truck is we're going to put him together a cam package for it, kind of fix those issues. He's also having a low side fuel system issue, hoping that that's just in the fuel pump control module, because the tune that's in the truck I'm pretty sure is just from Whipple, and they don't put like a crazy tune up in these trucks. This is the truck. Nice little Whipple supercharged truck, a little lift on it and some 33s, maybe even 35s. Should be a decent running truck, but we just have to get these issues straightened out. I think with probably like a BTR Stage 2 truck cam, it's going to be a really fun combination. Hopefully we can get this thing in soon, do a whole rundown on the cam install on this as well. The Gen 5s are a little bit more tricky than the Gen 3 and Gen 4 LSs. This truck probably won't be too bad. It does have a pretty big lift kit on it, which lowers the whole front diff assembly because the oil pan has to come out to do these cam jobs correctly. I think that might make it a little bit easier. Also, quick update on the Nova. I am waiting for the intercooler still. I did order an intercooler from Treadstone. The intercooler that I originally ordered for the size that I thought was going to fit, they were basically back ordered for about 3 to 4 weeks on it. I asked them what their other options were. They had a very similar sized intercooler that I think is going to work really well as well. It's only, I think, a 3-inch difference in core height, and I do have just enough room to make that work. Kind of at a standstill on this thing until then. I need to grab a throttle body. We're going to run a drive-by-wire setup on this car with the Holley. You know, everything's just sitting on the bench, kind of waiting for parts on that. Buttoned up what I can do to this point. It is a little bit tough to wait on parts for a car like this. This is the main reason why when I take on a fab job like this, I only schedule one car at a time. I don't know what parts I'm going to need ahead of time to get everything in the car fit the way that I want it to fit. Yeah, I can take some measurements. I can have him send me some measurements. I could go look at the car. In reality, I'm not going to know where this stuff's going to fit until I start laying the car out. Once I get this big giant turbo in there and all the piping and stuff in the way, I would hate to order something, spend $500-600 on an intercooler that I just don't know if it's going to fit when I get it. And then I have to deal with returning that, parts restocking fees, if I can even use it, if I can even return it, selling it secondhand and losing money. Being that this isn't, you know, this shop isn't my main everyday source of income, it does hurt to have a car sitting in here on a lift, not making money on it. We keep the lights on, you know, with the tint side of things, so it's not too bad. Once I get all the intercooler piping planned out, I'm going to start planning out for the fuel system and electronics. Not sure what we're going to do fuel system wise yet. He does have a stock tank in the car. I'm not sure if I've said that before. We talked about sumping that tank. It would be nice to keep a stock tank in the stock location. We could use the stock filler neck in the side of the car. We wouldn't have a cell in the trunk. We wouldn't have to worry about a fuel wall. We wouldn't have to worry about opening the trunk every time he needs to go get gas for it. One problem with these Nova tanks is being that it's at so much of a downward angle, if I put a sump in the back of the tank, we would pretty much have to keep the thing at 1/2 to 3/4 of a tank at all times to keep fuel in the sump. Unless I build a sump that's going to keep the fuel, you know, towards the back. If I did build a sump that's going to be that deep, I mean, it's going to hang probably 6 or 7 inches down on the back of the car, and if you're behind the car, that's all you're going to see, even with the rear bumper on it. So I don't want it to look stupid from behind. I think there are some aftermarket options for sump tanks for these cars that aren't that hideous, so we'll look around and see what we can do there. If I have to wind up sumping this tank, it's not going to be that big of a deal. I don't think I can fit fuel pumps in the tank either, especially if we plan on making north of 1,000 horsepower. I don't want to start cramming 2-3 fuel pumps inside of this 1967 fuel tank. So other than that, we'll just get some parts flowing through the door here. Once I get parts in for the car, I'm going to start cutting and figuring out intercooler stuff. I got to get stuff priced up for that Gen 5 Whipple truck as well. I also have the C1500 project, still kind of lingering on parts for that, so I don't know, how quick I'm going to get the ball rolling on that. Got a few other things going on. I am talking to John Rogers at IDS about getting some front struts for the Lexus as well. That car's at the detail shop. I want to get that car back down here, give you guys a good overview of, what it takes to run the Holly and stuff on that, give you a good idea of the setup. And at some point, I'll do a garage walkthrough at the house as well, show you guys the C10 and the Supra. Got some plans for those as well, but again, with the newborn on the way here in the next 2 months or so, probably going to be chilling out for a little bit on those. I got some time. Just stay posted. Hopefully we get some progress going this week. I think the intercooler's supposed to be here Wednesday, and the piping's going to be here around the same time, so we'll start rolling on that, as well as the Gen 5 truck. And keep an eye out for updates on the C1500 as well. Again, just a bunch of stuff going on all at once, trying to keep up with it. I try to keep both shops as busy as possible, try to keep the money flowing. But this time of year it does get a little bit difficult. And like I said, while we're waiting on parts for the Nova, it is a good thing that I have this going over here as well, because without this, it would be really hard to do everything. Even though with both, it's still really hard to do everything. Just be patient with me. We're going to get these parts in. We're going to get cracking on this Nova. As I asked in the last 2 videos, please like, subscribe. It means a lot to me. I'm having a lot of fun doing this stuff. It's really keeping me motivated. So seeing you guys enjoy the content means a lot. But just keep an eye out for the next video. Should be something later this week. I'll have some updates on both of those.